how can you wow them? How can we set client expectations so much so that they want to tell the world that you're fantastic?
Welcome to the Solo to CEO podcast. We're sitting here with Andres Meyer. Did I pronounce that right?
Andres Yoav Mejer. So depending on the audience. The full name is Andres Yoav Rosenfeld Mejer. Because when I was born in Santiago, Chile, my mother's maiden name and my father's last name. So we're a little different down there.
Awesome. So Andres went from solo to CEO, and tell me, what do you do in a nutshell?
We help immigrants in a variety of ways. But the end goal is to achieve a green card or achieve citizenship and be able to take care of themselves and hopefully file for the rest of their family if they have family abroad. Now, we help them in a variety of different ways. There's 9 principal paths to legal status. We do about 8 of them. What's
the 9th?
Removal, which we're doing now, but we may not be doing forever because the courts are a disaster.
I'm Jewish. I always ask about the 9th, It's like, what's the one that you're not doing and why?
I get it. There's the shul I love and the one I'll never go to. I get it. But it's the courts are just a disaster. The backlog is massive. I mean, I've been an attorney almost 20 years now. I've done federal, state, municipal, every level in multiple states. I'm licensed in multiple states, and the immigration courts are so dysfunctional. It's difficult to have 30% of my revenue, but half of my staff working on it. Just doesn't make sense because the court is constantly making one mistake or another, and we have no choice but to respond. And by respond means file a motion for this, file a motion for that. It becomes unpredictable. Clients are like, well, I don't understand what's going on. Well, it's hard to keep on telling them, we don't understand either because this shouldn't happen. Rules say this doesn't happen.
Right.
So, if they don't clean up their act, we will likely get out of that altogether.
Right. So that's one of the big challenges that you're potentially going to just move away from if they don't get their act together.
Well, look, the reality is we get to choose who we want to serve and how we want to serve them. And that's one of the benefits of
running your own company.
Exactly. Is you can really choose. Here, the most expensive type of work that we tend to do are for people who are in removal. That tends to be the most complicated. But the amount of time that it takes to solve them, it's a real question whether it's worthwhile.
Awesome. So you're practicing primarily in New Jersey or completely in New Jersey?
Our major offices are in New Jersey, but we have one in Laredo, Texas, for example. We have clients in over 20 states.
Oh, wow. Okay, cool.
So we've gone national with COVID, which was a surprise.
Amazing. So now that we know pretty much what you do, how did you start out?
It's a good question, and I wish I had a good answer. Because when I went to law school, I did not take a single immigration law course. I did not think I was going to be doing immigration. I thought I was going to be doing either a prosecutor against criminal defendants or real estate development and finance, none of which have anything to do with immigration. But it took me a good 10 years to realize that I lived in Chile twice, I lived in Israel twice, I lived in the U.S. twice. And the more I started focusing on the Hispanic community, because I'm bilingual or trilingual, but because I speak Spanish, the more I realized their story was not so different from mine. And one of their questions that always came up is, can I get a green card? Can I get employment authorization? Can I be a U.S. citizen? And I'd always done it for friends and family, but I'd never done that type of work and charged for it before. So I started really considering it and looking into what are those options. I started taking a couple of cases. I liked it, and now that's all we do. But at the time, I was doing criminal work. I was doing family work, personal injury, workers' comp.
Jack of all trades, master of none.
I mastered a few, but yes, it's difficult to master all of them.
Right. Absolutely.
And even if you're good at it, but if you only touch a particular case for a couple times a year, it's hard to get the nuance.
Right. And you started out, you were as an individual solo?
You mean when I first passed the bar and I first became an attorney?
When you first started, or you started at Big Law or
I worked at Big Law, I worked at Middle Law, I worked at Small Law. and what I realized is I'm unemployable. I worked in college and I worked in law school. When I came back in 98 from Israel, I was here alone. So I had a full-time job. I went back to college. I graduated in 2 years. I did a year early. Then same thing in law school. I graduated early. I worked full-time in law firms during the day and took classes at night. So I felt like I had a pretty good handle on what the law was when I graduated, but I was going to be a prosecutor. That didn't work out. Hiring freeze. Admitted in June, married in October, expecting in November, moved to New Jersey in December. So we decided we did not want to raise a family in New York. So I just took the first opportunity that I had, which happened to be what I wanted at the time, was real estate development. After the prosecutor gig did not work out because of the hiring freeze from the tech bubble, I decided real estate finance is interesting. So why not? I have family that did the real estate development part, and they did very well in that. I said, well, why not? I did not think I would be a trial attorney. I did not think I would be a litigator. I figured, well, since prosecutor's not going to be it, let's go transactional.
Well, most people, I would say, don't really end up going for what they thought they were going to go for in college. They pivot kind of, along the
Sure.
way.
When it comes to the laws, people either know they want something and they work towards it, or they fall into it. For me, I never worked for somebody that did immigration. I'm entirely self-taught through CLEs, continuing legal education, and books and mentors and people that helped me grow along the way.
In terms of the learning on the job, was all
correct.
Self-taught.
I did not go and work for somebody else that did immigration. So when I learned it, I looked at it from a different perspective, and I think I bring that different perspective. Being an immigrant, having come here as a kid, not speaking English, moving to Israel as an adult, not speaking Hebrew, then coming back on vacation and staying without anyone, I kind of lived the immigrant experience under any possible fashion. And at the end of the day, it's what I found to be most meaningful. Helping somebody stay out of jail, fine. Keeping their license, keeping families together, getting them a monetary award when they've been injured. All of those can have meaning. But for me, when I get their green card, they become a U.S. citizen, and their entire life has changed for them, for their kids, for their grandkids, I found nothing to be more rewarding for me personally than that. And that's ultimately why I chose to stay in immigration, even though had you asked me in 2003 that's what I've been doing, I would have laughed. Like, no, I'm going to do international law. I'm going to solve the Middle East conflict.
Exactly.
That's we're all ideologues when we're in school.
And then it's like dollars and cents and what's my real passion.
It's funny how fast mortgage, student loans, kids change your outlook from what you'd like to do to what I have to do. And then ultimately you get back to what you would want to do. But as we get older, what we want changes.
Right.
So I love what I do. And I love the fact that I'm able to help other people in doing it. When I was in school, I always went back and forth between business and law. I wasn't sure which I would choose to be. Now I get to be both. But you asked, so yes, I discovered I'm unemployable because I kind of have a set way I think of how things should be done. And if I work for somebody that I don't respect, I'm not quiet about it, and it doesn't work well with others.
Right. Absolutely not.
And in big law, that really did not work well.
So your first step after passing the bar was big law?
No. So the first was I worked at a law firm during insurance coverage. That's what I was doing in law school, and then they offered me a position. So after that, I went to big law. And big law was kind enough to have me reviewing documents in a warehouse. It was the most mind-numbing activity ever. I felt literally like a monkey could do what I did, except I was doing it in Spanish and Portuguese. I didn't speak Portuguese. They didn't care. My Spanish was good enough. I could determine if something is privileged or not. I mean, it was mind-numbing, grueling, 10, 12 hours a day.
Whoa.
7 days a week. I wasn't Sabbath observant back then. I was becoming so.
How long did that last for?
Until I paid for my wedding and left. I couldn't stand it.
Was it a year?
Yeah. A year and a couple months.
Wow.
Long enough to realize if this is what big law is about, I have no desire to earn my chops, so to speak. That is just
grueling.
Yeah, and it's just mind-numbing.
So then you jumped ship and you moved to middle law?
So I actually went to small law. So around that same time is when my wife and I decided we were going to wait because we both were doing well financially. We met in law school. She's an attorney, I'm an attorney, but she graduated before me. This is right not too far after 9/11. We agreed we didn't want to raise a family in New York City for a variety of reasons. So first opportunity came to New Jersey. There was a firm of 3 attorneys. And maybe there were 8 people total. But my employer at the time allowed me to do one thing, and that's carry his briefcase. So
Oh, wow.
I could write all of his briefs, but it didn't allow me to argue them. And that got old pretty quickly. So I was there for 2 years. Then I went to a medium-sized firm that did insurance defense. I wanted to do the litigation. I figured, well, if the litigation I did got me interested enough that let me do it for real. So I did that for 2 years, and then I opened up my own firm.
So how did that happen? What was that like change when you realized you were unemployable? Walk me through like what was going on at the time.
So let's see, 2009, 2010. I'd been an attorney 5-6 years. I was at mid-law firm. Partner wanted me to come and knock on his door 3 times a day and remind him that he had to do something. And I told him no. I said, my office is on the other side. I have my requirements. You have yours. I'm not going to come and remind you 3 times a day. He pretty much told me, well, your future here is in doubt. I said, that's okay. There's just things I'm not going to do. They were cool about it. They said, listen, we'll give you time to find another job. No problem. They gave me 6 months.
Because you wouldn't become his alarm clock, so now you have to.
Well,
find
I mean,
another
that
job.
was just one symptom of it.
Oh, okay.
You know, I don't kiss up. I should have. I mean, my second child was born. We had just bought a foreclosed property, spent every dollar that we had renovating it. I didn't have 2 cents to my name at that point. And I did what some might say was a selfish decision, putting myself rather than my family's needs. But I just couldn't stomach having to do that. My first day on the job, my in-laws were visiting, and one of the partners came to me and gave me 3 cases, said, okay, I want you to read this and I want you to summarize it for tomorrow. This is what he gives me at 4 o'clock. He's like, well, I have my in-laws. He says, well, it's your first day. You're going to be meeting with a managing partner tomorrow. Do you want to impress him or not? Do you want this job or not? This is what he told me on the first day. I stood up all night. I did it. I met him the next morning. They didn't want to meet with me. They just wanted to see if I would do it. That kind of abuse shouldn't happen, but it's quite common in the law. And I put up with it for a while until I really couldn't tolerate it anymore. So when they said, yeah, it's time for us to part as friends, it kind of pushed me to, well, am I going to go work for somebody else or am I going to go on my own? And I decided to go open up my own law firm. And here we are 12 years later. You know, they forced me to become a superstar somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly. Which is good. It's probably the best thing that happened to you in your career.
I can't complain. I wouldn't have the freedom that I have now. Well, I mean, is anybody ever free when they own a business? But
relative freedom.
Right. So it's
freedom of choice.
Exactly. I can choose to suffer.
Choose how you want to suffer.
Exactly. A lot of entrepreneurs, I think, and it's not limited to service industry, it's not limited to professionals, but a lot of us realize that, you know what, sometimes we can only do things a certain way, and you can only put up doing it differently for so long.
Right. So what was the first step once you left that and you dove into the, you know, solo, I'm jumping in, I'm going to do this myself. What was the first thing that happened?
Well, I was relatively new to New Jersey. I mean, I grew up here, but I had been gone for 15 years, so I didn't really keep in touch with people. I didn't have any family here. I mean, I had an uncle and aunt, but I didn't have close relatives. So I had to learn how to market. I could be the best attorney in the world, but if nobody knows I exist, it doesn't do any good. So how do I do it?
And that's one thing they don't teach you in law school.
No. There was a entrepreneurial program at Brookdale Community College. So I did that for a couple of months.
At the time, or this was something you did while you were in your school years?
This is what I did after I opened up my law firm. So I opened up in May, and that certificate was in July. So it was a 2 or 3 month program to quote unquote teach you how to run a business.
Yeah.
Looking back of it, it doesn't teach you much, right? But it gives you the basics for what they believe is important. And it helped me. It helped me start thinking about, well, okay, I guess I need an accounting program. Maybe I need a bookkeeper. I learned very quickly, well, where can I get leads? So at the time, it was traffic violations. So I became a criminal defense attorney. When my movers moved my furniture into my office, which was then in Long Branch, I was there for almost a decade before where we are now. And one of the movers had a girlfriend who had a traffic violation. I didn't know anything about municipal court. I didn't know anything about traffic tickets.
Yeah, I'll take it.
I spoke Spanish. She speaks Spanish. Fine. I did it. She never fully paid for it. I learned an important lesson there, get paid in advance. But I walked into municipal court, and the judge was visibly distressed. He was trying to talk to a Mexican individual. I don't remember what the violation was, but there was no translator, and they couldn't communicate. So I'm like, Your Honor, I speak Spanish. Can I help? He's like, yeah, thank you. So I explained to him what was going on. I walked out with 3 clients only because I was bilingual. And that's when I realized, okay, there's potential business here. So I said, all right, where can I find leads? Well, at the time, it was relatively
This is
new.
something you asked yourself or you asked an individual?
This is what I asked myself.
Oh, okay.
So I could do this. This is not all that complicated.
I got this.
This isn't difficult. I picked up the rule book. I studied a little bit. This is not hard. It's traffic court after all. I said, how can I get more of this type of work? And I realized I could purchase leads. All right. So we call it, now it's called jail mail, or we call it in the trade jail mail. You can purchase a lead of individuals that have been accused of certain offenses. And then you can send them direct mail pieces to try to convert them to clients.
What does that mean, purchase a lead?
So
Who's the seller?
in this case, it's the state of New Jersey. The state of New Jersey collects in a database everybody that has an offense. Name, address, what the offense is.
And you could purchase their contact info.
Correct. You could purchase that information. It's a very old system on the New Jersey side. It's difficult to access, but there are third-party companies that will access it and then sell it to someone like myself. I was going to court during the day, meeting with clients, and then printing and folding 200, 300, 400 letters a day.
Wow.
And mailing that out. And I did that for months until I started recognizing the names, and I realized the company was charging me for the same names multiple times. So, I blew a lot of money that way until I learned my lesson. But one of the most common questions that came out of those conversations are, well, what about immigration? How is this going to affect me? I became a DUI attorney because that was the most expensive type of service I could offer in a municipal court context. Traffic violations, I realized very quickly, you need to have a large volume of them. But I didn't really want to be I got 45 cases today.
You want high ticket, low volume.
Exactly. So we did both for a while, and we grew the immigration practice out of that. I forget what your original question was.
I know, me too. My question was what your first step was, and you walked me
Purchase
through the first
leads.
few steps.
Yeah. So first step was find out how do I market, and from that everything grew.
You answered the question pretty well. It doesn't always happen. Sometimes I'll ask a question and I'll get a completely different answer from whoever I'm interviewing. But usually the answer is also great. I'm like, I should have asked that question.
I do tend to go off on tangents.
But my job really is, at the end of the day, you're the one that's interesting here. My job is to pull out the best from you. So whatever you say is great.
I realized early on that I had to be a very effective marketer in order to be a good attorney. How good I was didn't matter if nobody knew about me. So we started on the DUI, then we added divorce, child support, child custody, then we added immigration, and in 2020 we sent all of our criminal, all our family law of counsels that we worked with, people that we knew and trusted. And last year we decided we won't even do that anymore. We'll just send them the referrals. So we only do immigration now, and in the future we might. Like I said, removal might be something we might not do forever, only because it's very reactive. I don't want
You want to be proactive.
Exactly. And if I'm always responding to the court, then I can't determine where I'm going to be or what I'm going to do whenever I want to.
Okay, right. So you started out. So you were by yourself, and now you're doing.
So we're immigration only.
Oh, we're already at immigration. Okay, fine.
We're only at immigration only.
And where are we holding right now on the timeline?
So we made the decision in 2021
that's recent.
to go down only to immigration. And we changed our entire practice in the past 2 years. I mean, we made more innovations into how we do what we do in the past 2 years than we did in the first 10. From remote work. I mean, we were always built for remote work. We have staff in different parts of the world. About half the team is in the U.S., but others really, I have some U.S. citizens that are outside the U.S. It just depends on their knowledge and their experience.
What would you say is the thing that you do most within immigration? You said there's 9 different parts. Which part would you say you're busiest with?
We like more the humanitarian work. So people that have been victim of a violent crime, that could be a U visa, T visa, or an S visa, or in an abusive relationship with a U.S. citizen, lawful permanent resident, so that's VAWA, Violence Against Women's Act. Those two are probably 30% of what we do in total. The other 30% would be family-based green cards and citizenship. So when I say citizen, filing to become a U.S. citizen because you've had your green card the requisite period of time. Between humanitarian work and the green card citizenship process, that's 67% of what we do. Removal will be the other third. But some people who are in removal also are filing for a green card or filing for citizenship. So there's a lot of overlap in the removal area. It's not clean cut.
Okay, and this removal thing, which you went through a few times, we discussed. Dumb it down for me a second.
Okay, so this is where the government is saying, Yaakov, you're not a U.S. citizen. You don't have a right to be here. I want to deport you. And they serve you
So it's
a
fighting
complaint.
deportation.
Exactly. They file a complaint called a notice to appear, and you then have to say, well, yes, Your Honor, it's true that I'm here without permission, but for the following reasons, I'm entitled to stay here. And that's one of the things that we do best, is really figuring out not just do you qualify for something, it's is there something in your past that can disqualify you? And if so, can we fix it? So it's really a 3-step inquiry. Do you have a path? There's 9 principal paths. Then we go, once we have one, you then look at the individual's past history. Is there anything that disqualifies you? There's 5 principal things. If you have one of those 5, then there's one of 3 ways to fix it. So we don't accept any client that doesn't have a path. And if they have a negative, then we have a way to fix it. And we evaluate that at the initial consultation.
Awesome. So let's rewind again. Mm-hmm. Go back to the point of the journey where you were by yourself, and something was happening. You were starting to get more and more, business drumming up, and you made that decision to become from I to we. How did that happen?
Very unintentionally. Somebody, an attorney that I don't know, just on a listserv from other New Jersey attorneys that I'd communicated with, reached out to me and said, listen, I have the perfect intern for you. And I'm thinking, intern? Not paid? Yes, that sounds great. I could use not paid help. I just responded quickly, well, they'd have to at least be bilingual before we even consider it. Well, turns out she's trilingual. Spanish, Portuguese, English, a little bit of Greek. Okay, I'll interview her. And she wanted a paid internship. I wanted an unpaid internship. I took her on. She's been with me now 11 years. She's my first and longest employee. We have one other that's been here 10 years, and another one that's been here 8, but she's been here the longest.
In the capacity of a lawyer?
No. At the time, she was finishing her undergraduate. She then got a master's, but she didn't go to law school. Now she heads our finance department. She works with our accountants and the rest of our team to make sure that people pay on time and we have good reporting on accounts receivable and that bills get paid on time.
Right.
As my journey continued on the marketing side, we hired more specialized roles. So first was somebody that helped me on the phones. I mean, I was answering all the calls, and then I was calling them back, and that was just dumb. So I started replacing myself in certain things, like the initial client conversations, and then booking them for appointments, and then setting up a script for what should that call look like? What should that call sound like?
So building processes.
Exactly. So from that, business went up. So then I needed more people to help me get the work done. And as that happened, then I needed managers that helped me manage some of the stuff. So I alone, I could manage 2, 3, 4, 5. Anything past 5 becomes difficult.
So you had to get HR help.
I needed help, not necessarily HR.
Oh, a manager.
Yeah, so what we call it an office manager, but that means different things to different people. It took a while to realize, okay, what I need is a sales department. I need a customer service, we call it client success department, and I need a production department. And production includes attorneys and case managers. I don't call them paralegals because not everybody has a certificate. And to be honest, the certificate is useless. I'd rather have somebody with 2 years experience and 2 years in a paralegal degree that knows nothing.
Right.
The experience is much more valuable to me. So I call them case managers. Each department has their role. Each department has their metrics that they live by. Every employee should know what success means in their role. And it's very much a work in progress. But at the end of the day, marketing is math. Running a business is math. It's not complicated math, but it is math.
Right. Every business, even if it's a service business, comes down to buying and selling oranges. At the end of the day, it starts out as selling your time, but that's not a business. That's
well, some people never get out of that.
Right.
So before I opened up my own shop, I billed by the hour. I started that in immigration also very quickly. That got very frustrating for the clients and for me. Every month they would complain about how much I charged for this phone call versus not. So I estimated how much time I was spending and what I was charging. I raised it by 30%, and that became the flat fee. And clients were happy about it. And I was happier because I was making more money.
Right.
And I realized this is so stupid. I can't believe I didn't do this before.
And one of the advantages of not billing by hours, when you delegate
Yeah.
a good chunk of the work, if not all of the work, it's the same price. Whereas if you're billing by the hour, so you'll be, let's say, $800 an hour. If you have one of the other lawyers, it'll be $400 an hour.
That's also a misnomer. What you said is what's commonly done. I don't think it's the right approach. At the end of the day, if I bill $500 an hour or $800 an hour, whether an associate does it or I do it, it should still be the same fee because I'm responsible for it. I have to review it. And if that attorney makes a mistake, I still get sued. So if the liability is the same, the fee should be the same.
Right.
I don't do that, and I don't bill by the hour, generally speaking. But if I did, I wouldn't make a difference between what an associate would charge and what I would charge.
I mean, I guess it's an arguable point, because when you're talking about per hour, a lot of what's not taken into account is the efficiency of the person doing it.
Yep.
So when it's per project, it doesn't really matter who does it.
Correct.
You're taking responsibility as long as it gets done. Whereas when it's per hour, I would think that it does matter who does it, because if you were doing it, you'd do it 2.5 times faster than if
maybe yes, maybe no, but
you don't even have to go into any of that if you're billing per project.
But at the end of the day, there's only so much you can bill a client for a particular task before they say, "Wait a minute." Hold on a second. You're $800 an hour and you spent 5 hours on a phone call? That doesn't make sense. Oh, it was a phone call with the court. Okay, maybe. Still a lot. He's like, well, I was only 3 hours on the same call as you were. What's going on? Right. So there's only so much that you could do.
Right.
And I have to make sure that my associates do it in a timely and efficient manner.
Right.
So they can't overbill. Again, does it matter? No, because I'm not doing it. But if
Right.
I was billing by the hour, if I was to change my practice and to do it that way, I wouldn't make the distinction. For the simple reason is they'd still doing it under my name, and I have the liability and the responsibility, so I wouldn't make the difference. I wouldn't lose money by having Yaakov do it instead of me. So
Right.
wait a minute. Now there's a disincentive to have someone other than me doing it. I should be doing all the work.
Right.
That's not the kind of business I want to do.
Exactly. You want to be removing yourself as much as possible from it.
Correct. To the extent possible.
Exactly. So, I mean, I think in any service business, the goal is really I think success lies very far away from the billing per hour thing. And when you're able to bill per task done, it's better for the client because they know what they're getting into. They know exactly what it's going to cost them.
Sure.
And it's better for the service provider because they're able to scale that now, and it's not dependent on time. It's dependent on progress done, which is really what the client cares about.
At the end of the day, that really depends on the type of business that you're in. I know attorneys that are family law attorneys, so they bill by the hour. Much of family law is done in the courthouse. It's not paralegal or case manager driven. It's motions in front of judges and trials. And the way that they build a business that way is by units. So it's an attorney and an assistant, and they give them cases. And as they build more cases, they hire another attorney, another assistant, give them cases. And then there's a QA process, quality assurance, where it's a practicing manager or an attorney manager that reviews the work to make sure that quality is done consistently. So you can build a successful practice that's done hourly, but not necessarily done by the individual.
Right.
They can pick and choose the cases that they want to work on. But any attorney that wants to go down that road ultimately has to choose, do they like the business more or do they like the practice of law more? Because it's difficult to do both.
Right.
So you could be the attorney and then you hire someone to help manage the business, or you could manage the business and hire someone to be the practicing attorney. Not that I don't practice law. I mean, a lot of things go through me, even though I don't go to court as often as I used to.
Right.
I don't go to hearings as often as I used to. I kind of go in the cases that I'm interested in. So I get to
great.
choose which
Exactly.
ones I want to work on. What causes do I want to serve? Or do I want to further? Do I want to take litigation because I think it's going to go to the Circuit Court of Appeals or the Supreme Court? Well, if I like the issue, maybe I'll take it. Maybe I'll do it. Maybe I won't charge for it. Maybe I'll charge a reduced amount because I believe in the cause rather than the particular case. That's the fun of being at my place.
Right. And also the one of the advantages is that you're looking at more as from like a dollar cents point of view, as opposed to there's less emotions in it, where you get to make decisions that financially make sense, as opposed to making decisions that, I don't want to have to deal with that, so you don't do it. Whereas it could be financially it would be better for the business.
Well, that really depends on the profitability of the organization.
Yeah.
Past 2 years have been brutal. When COVID hit, we lost money like a lot of businesses for a while, until we had to turn things around. We had to make changes to figure out, well, okay, what worked before is all overnight is no longer working. So what are we going to do now? But to answer your question, yes, if an organization is profitable, you can choose what you want to do and how you want to do it. If you're struggling to make payroll next week, you have a lot less discretion in the type of work you want to do.
Right.
And you find yourself that, I don't want to take that case, but I kind of have to because I have to meet payroll. And I was there often enough. It's not pretty.
Right. I'll give an example to illustrate. I mean, that's true as well. What I mean more is like in a situation where you need to put like an extra 10 unpaid hours into a project because of whatever it is, or paid hours, a project you don't really want. Right. So what you're saying actually is that right? We were just talking about the
work in progress optimist. I try to find the silver lining, because otherwise it's just depressing. If I have to tell myself I just ate 20 hours worth of work, I don't like that. If I tell myself, well, I got to eat 20 hours worth of work, but I'm gonna have a system, so this never happens again.
Exactly.
Well, I can go to sleep at night that way.
Right. Don't just be reactive. Be proactive.
Correct.
From every situation, so you can turn actually what could be a bad situation into your biggest teacher. Both of these things could only really happen when you're sort of removed from the nuances of everything that has to get done. So when it's not you that's going to be doing the extra work, then you're able to make that decision. So that's the reactive that we discussed. But then there's also the proactive, which you just said, is that when you're not the one in the day-to-day work and you're able to be in the top of the triangle, the imagination stage, right? I don't remember who said this, but it's a triangle where it's like the first one is doing, and there's managing, leading, and imagining. So when you're at the top and you're thinking about how to make the business better and not how to get through the day, then you're able to create these processes from mistakes.
It was a psychologist that said it. The name escapes me.
Well, you've heard it as well.
Yeah.
Amazing. If you were a solo individual that was just plagued with a situation like this, where you had to put in a whole lot of extra work just to please a client, then you wouldn't even have the time or headspace to be able to start creating processes from it, and it would just be a never-ending hamster wheel making these kind of mistakes.
So let me reframe that a little bit, because there's two different approaches to business. There's the scaling model, which seems like what we're talking about, but there's also the keep it small and keep it all. Neither of them is wrong. That. By the way, I didn't name it. I don't come up with a lot of stuff. I just read a lot, so I borrow it from others.
The question is if you can remember the names of the people you're quoting.
Well, this was from a mentor of mine, Richard James. But
thanks,
he probably got it from Jim Collins or Zig Ziglar or Dan Kennedy. That's one of those
Dan
three.
Kennedy. Cool.
There's nothing wrong if you're making $500,000 and 250, 300,000 is yours, versus having a large organization making millions but actually earning less and having more aggravation. It's about what you want and what works for you. And whether it's a smaller organization or whether you want to conquer the world, it's just about what do you want to achieve and how do you want to do it. Neither of them are wrong.
Right.
At the end of the day, it's top line number, gross domestic product, GDP, that's for vanity. Sanity is the net number. What do you keep home? Right. What do you take out of it?
Right.
And there really isn't the wrong answer. So if I'm a solo and I'm a videographer, which I'm not creative. Right? I have ideas, but actually making that into reality, I need someone else to do that. But if that's what I was doing and I was good at what I was doing, I would just keep on raising my prices until I was happy. And I'd be working on maybe 2 or 3 projects at a time, but each of them are 20, 30, 40, 50,000. And I do it until the client is satisfied.
Right. That's been my model. I learned that no matter how much or little a client pays, they still expect top service.
Yep.
So when I give
why
someone
undercharge? Why give discounted rates?
Right. Well, one reason why would be because you're heading towards that point where you're able to charge the bigger rates. But yes, a common misconception that I fell into many times is that I'll think if I gave someone 90% off because I really wanted that project for whatever reasons I had, that ends up being the worst project I've ever had, because I say I'm going all in, but I'm not really, because subconsciously I'm like, okay, I'm getting like $5 for this.
The people you go out of your way for, you discounted their rate, they become the neediest, most difficult clients you could ever have. I don't negotiate my rates. Some of my prospective clients try to do that, and I tell them, listen,
I'm not your guy.
Right. I mean, if you're looking for the lowest price, I'm definitely not your guy.
If you're looking for the best results.
Again, another quote from someone else. You can get best service, you can get best results, and you can get lowest price. And I've never found anyone that could do all three.
So I have this theory that the same personality trait that leads someone to ask for a discount or really push for a discount, that it's that same personality that will nitpick you and squeeze out every dime that they can from you.
Well, I've certainly found that to be true on occasion.
This is a good one. The loudest boos come from the cheapest seats. Oh, who said that? I don't remember.
I don't know, but that's a good one. I'm going to remember that one. But,
it's so true, though.
So in terms of price, in valuing what we charge, at least from attorneys and probably most service professionals, the problem is in our heads. Now, if you're a doctor, a lot of what you earn is determined by contracts with insurance companies. They have a lot of less control for what they charge and what they collect. But for attorneys, we don't really have that limitation. A lot of attorneys don't believe that they're in a business. It's a practice. It's a firm. It's not a business. Well, that respectfully, they're mistaken. But in the law world, it's only since 1978 that we could advertise at all. So there's still people practicing that grew up in the law where there was no such thing as, not that many anymore, as marketing and then treating the law as a business. But I found that the biggest impediment to charging a fair amount is what we believe our clients are going to say. Not what they're actually going to do or not. It's what we believe. And when I first started doing DUIs, I was vastly undercharging. So what I did is I raised it by $500 from each client till I got to a point that a lot less people were hiring. So I tracked what was my conversion rate. I more than doubled my rates without any change in conversion. What that means is if one day I was charging $2,500 and the next day I'm charging $5,000 and still 45% of each person that comes is hiring me, I just gave myself a nice raise.
Exactly, at no cost. I have a whole theory that if you raise your prices, your clients will actually appreciate it. It affords you to give them a better service.
Well, you have the resources to be able to hire the right people, to be able to market right,
exactly,
to find the type of people that you want to serve. The challenge is how much will the market bear? So my target audience is predominantly Spanish-speaking, blue-collar workers. So construction, landscape, restaurants, principally what they do in this area. Now, we also have Asian clients, some from the Middle East, but we built our model around Spanish speakers, and all 25 of our employees, with the exception of 2, well, they're both bilingual, they just don't speak Spanish. Everybody else speaks Spanish and English. So that's still where most of our clients are, but if I tell them tomorrow I'm charging you 5 times as much, that is not something they're going to be able to do. So there is a limit to how high you could go. But that doesn't mean we can't find other clients for if we want to charge that amount for the same work.
Right.
That was a long way of saying is we get to choose the work that we do. And we can set the prices that we believe we're entitled to.
Right. As long as the value is there, number one, and that you have enough eyeballs on your business that you're going to be able to get those people that see it at that value. Because there are always going to be the low ballers.
Sure. The challenge is presenting value. How are we different from others? And ensuring that our clients, our prospective clients, know and understand we're not Walmart. So if you want Walmart, you're in the wrong place. If you want the Nordstrom's, you're going to pay for Nordstrom's.
Exactly.
And
if you want Nordstrom Rack, You'll
Correct.
get Nordstrom Rack service.
Exactly. Right off the felt. Here's the suit I want.
Exactly. And you won't get your size. That's pretty much it. So right now we're sitting here in Eatontown.
Yes, we are.
And how many locations do you have? Is that 4
We're
locations? 5 locations.
But we're meeting next week for I'm looking at a Trenton location.
Oh, cool. 5 going on 6.
Yes.
And you have 25 employees, correct?
Correct.
So there's a big gap from, not gap, but there's a big journey that happens between you being by yourself and having 25. So you were saying that it's sort of like, one thing after the other. Okay, I need someone doing my bookkeeping. I need someone, answering my calls. I need someone that's doing, I guess, research for me and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
So how was that experience, just like suddenly multiplying yourself?
Frustrating, stressful. There were highs and lows. It took me a while to realize I needed more people. I didn't wake up one day and say, "Oh, I need 25 people."
Right.
That was. I still don't need 25 people. I still don't necessarily want to have 25 people. Payroll sucks every 2 weeks.
Oh, you do every 2 weeks?
Well, we do it twice a month, 24 times a year, rather than every 2 weeks. And the reason for that is because if you do it every 2 weeks, you have some months where there's 3 pay periods. So if you're looking at your profit and loss, all of a sudden it's out of whack. Whoa, why are we down 20,000? Oh, we didn't. Because payroll's 40,000. And you got 3 of them this month instead of 2. So we did it for our budgeting purposes.
Oh, I got you.
But
Okay,
each
fine.
individual paycheck is a little bit more than what it would have been when it was 26. It's the same salary at the end of the year, but that salary is divided by 24 payments instead of 26 payments.
I'm going to sit down later and run the numbers with the calculator.
I had to do the same thing, honestly. Because when I started doing my P&L and started tracking profit and loss, it freaked me out. Why all of a sudden 2 months out of the year, my numbers were totally out of left field. And it was because we had 3 pay periods in that month. So yeah, I could just note in my head that's February and whatever, November. It's not November, but whatever month that happens to be, or I could change the system to make sure it never happens. I'd rather change the system than I don't have to remember anything.
Right. Were you always doing like your accounting from the beginning, your internal business bookkeeping? I'm not talking about tax bookkeeping.
I tried and I screwed it up. So I realized early on that's not a strength I have. Even when I didn't have $1 to my name, I didn't wash my own laundry. So when I was in college or when I was in law school and I wasn't sure how I was paying the rent, I would drop off my laundry and have someone else do it because I just hated it. Well, bookkeeping is the same thing. I freaking hated it. Now, it's important to do, and you got to review all the money that comes in. You got to sign all the checks. You got to review what goes out. But there's ways to inspect without having to do it all yourself. So I have a bookkeeper. I have an accountant. I have a tax planner, and they work together, and I'm only involved in reviewing and making strategic decisions. I don't have to do all of it myself, which is true about a lot of what we as business owners do. We don't have to do it all ourselves.
Right.
But we're accountable. Buck stops here.
Right. But it wasn't like that at the beginning. In the beginning, you had to do your own bookkeeping.
No,
correct?
I did, and I took QuickBooks Online courses. I hired a personal. I didn't call it a coach, but bookkeeper. He was the accounting teacher at the program I was at. I had him do it.
Was that the entrepreneur certificate?
Yes. He did it for a while. Then he came down with cancer, and thankfully he lived and survived. He got out of it, but he stopped taking on private clients while he was on chemo, and which I understood. And I had a variety of other people doing it, and never went back.
So let's zoom out a second,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to ask you a very general question. What are some challenges that you've encountered across this journey, whether as challenges, in hiring people, challenges in, things that you just didn't see that suddenly came up along your journey, and how'd you deal with them?
It's different challenges at different times depending on where I was. So initially was, when do I hire? And who do I hire? How do I determine who? We're still trying to figure this out, by the way. Who's the best candidate? Who's most likely to succeed? When you absolutely need someone, are you going to accept someone that may not work out because you need a body? Or are you going to make the hard decision and wait and find the right person?
Wow, that's a big one.
And we've all learned
The hard way.
the hard way because we're desperate. And I mean, I've had people try to steal from me, and we've all emphasis on try, right? Thankfully, they were not successful, but I can't say they were not successful because I was so good at what I was doing. It was they were just bad at what they were doing, and they got caught. Even though I was pre-COVID a 85% cash-based business, I reported all of my income, and some of my accountants didn't understand why I did that. And to be honest, there were some days I didn't understand why I did that, but I was able to sleep at night. So January 2020, I was audited by New Jersey Bar Association. They call it a random audit, but in my lifetime, I knew it was going to happen, and I didn't want to take the chance.
And you had everything in the books.
Yep. I mean, but they always find something. But apparently, in law, it's not general accounting principles. It's not GAAP. It's a triple booking system. That's what I said. I said, what? So I have to reconcile twice? What are you talking about? Why on earth? Because that's what's done in the law. Okay.
How does that work? What does that mean, a triple booking system? How do you reconcile twice? Once it's reconciled, is it not reconciled?
I'm sure an accountant can give an example. I cannot.
As long as you don't have to deal with it.
I turned the accountant and said, do you know what that is? Yes. They explained it to me. I said, okay, I got it. And then we went and we spent some time and we reconciled all our accounts the way they wanted it, and we were fine. And that and the name of my checks. I had to have two different checks, one clearly saying business and one clearly saying trust. Okay, fine. I don't even use the trust account, and I don't write any checks, but they needed me to change the names on the checks. It's fine. Again, these are requirements, and yes, we had to do it, but it's hard to know it. And it's not taught in law school. All of a sudden, you have your own practice, and you don't know what these small details are. So we did them. And thankfully, but there was nothing else to find. I know an attorney who was a friend of mine who had to fight suspension of her license for information she volunteered. And the law was quite adamant that she had to be suspended until the Supreme Court of New Jersey said, that's a stupid law, let me change it. And that's what they did.
They changed the law for her.
Well, they made an exception. Hiring, always a problem. But before we got to any of that, marketing. How do I run a business? What does that mean? And honestly, the answer is different depending on your journey. If I'm at 0 to $500,000 in revenue, my business looks very different than if I'm at $1 million or at 2 or at 3. My organization looks different. The challenges one faces are different. And I would argue it's the same irrespective of the business, whether I sell widgets or whether I sell services. If I'm at 0 to $500,000, I have the same challenges. So it starts with, how do you market? Then once you get better at the marketing, how do you ensure quality of service? If when you start, you as the owner is doing everything, how do you then provide the same level of service when you are no longer doing everything? So initially it's hiring good people and trusting them. Fine, but everyone makes mistakes. How do you ensure that things still get done the same time, even as you're growing and scaling? And that becomes a challenge. And then realizing, okay, you need middle management. What is middle management in an organization that has 8 employees? What the hell is middle management? Well, it's one manager, right? But at 10, at 12, at 15, the changes we did now, figuring out the 3 departments that we have, sales and marketing, customer service, client success, and production that gets the work done. That is a structure that will allow us to scale. So we have a couple of hiring bottlenecks right now, but once we solve that, we know generating leads is not a problem for us. Getting clients is not a problem for us, but we don't want to get so many that we can't produce it on time. So it's about figuring out what are the bottlenecks in your particular business. How do you need to achieve your growth? Well, what is it you want to achieve? So our mission is to help 5,000 families in the next 5 years. Now, last year we helped 441. That's the most we ever did. But if we want to do 5,000 in 5 years,
You need a roadmap.
it's a much larger organization that we need to have. But that's the mission.
That is your mission?
That is our mission.
Nice.
5,000 in 5 years.
Have you ever had to fire a client?
Of course.
How did that work?
Well, the first one was hard. After that, it becomes easy. We don't tolerate rudeness. So if someone abuses my staff, they're done.
That's
I don't
it.
care what they've paid. I don't care how much they paid. I don't care who they are.
No warning, no parachute.
Well, no, we give them a warning. So listen, your conduct is unacceptable. If you're not going to treat our team respectfully, we all have bad days. I understand you're going through a stressful time, whatever that is. Maybe I get it. What's going on? What's really going on? If they don't really have a reason, if that's just who they are, I'm sorry. Here's the name of 3 people that I would recommend. Maybe one of them is a better fit for you.
And all of those people are people that you hate and you want to send them the jerk.
Well, that depends on who the individual is. And that depends on what they did. I mean, so is it a personality issue between an employee and what happened? So because
each situation you have to assess individually, of course.
Because a lot of our stuff is recorded, so consultations are recorded, phone calls are recorded. Generally, if they come into the office, there's video. We can go back and review the interaction and say, what really happened here? So I will hear both sides out and then I'll make a decision. So I read a book by Horst Schultz. From his perspective, only the general manager can decide who's a jerk. If you allow your employees to decide that a client is a jerk, every difficult client becomes a jerk. And the reality is sometimes your team's wrong. Sometimes we're wrong. It happens. But you have to hear the other side out and evaluate, well, how can we fix this? Can we apologize and make it right or not? Or it's nothing we did, it's somebody they did. Can they apologize and make it right? And if the answer is no, then you walk away. His numbers are, there's less than 5% of all clients that are actually jerks. 95% are not. 95% are just somebody that wants to be heard, that hasn't been heard for whatever reason. And something happened to them to set them off, rightfully or wrongfully, but if you allow them to vent their frustration in a meaningful way, you can get past it and still have a good relationship and give them the service that they need or the outcome that they want. But there's that 5% that there's no amount of effort is going to change that. Those are the jerks that only the general manager can say no to.
So the goal is to really just try and make it work as much as possible.
Correct.
But if that's like literally not working and it's the general manager making that decision, it's not working, not the emotionally involved employee.
Correct.
Then you have to terminate. Otherwise, you're killing yourself.
Right. Otherwise, we're working for them. And even though we're not always.
Right.
So when I first opened up, I'm going to be big firm mentality with a small boutique service. So you're going to get my cell phone. You're going to get to speak to me all the time, whenever you want. When I had 2 clients, that was fine. When we started growing, that became impossible. And some people took advantage. They would call on a Friday, on a Saturday, on a Sunday. They would call at 10 o'clock at night and say, hey, what's going on with my case? And you're calling me at 10 o'clock at night to find out what's going on a weekend? Are you nuts?
How'd you react to that?
Very badly. I was not happy. Are the police at your door? No. Were you in a car accident? Are you in an emergency? Do you need... So this is not an emergency. Why are you calling me at 10 o'clock at all, ever, if it's not an emergency? What makes you think that I should be available to serve you at this time? Oh, I'm so sorry. But when it started happening more frequently, I had a Brooklyn number that I had for a long, long time. I got rid of it. I changed my cell phone. I got a Google Voice number. I forwarded that number to the Google Voice. I still get messages every now and again, but now it's all spam.
I think a challenge that's very common that I've experienced in the service industry is that people think that once they're paying you, that they actually own you. They're like that you belong to them, and they can just call you whenever they want because they're paying you.
Yeah, and that is a common mentality unless you educate them otherwise.
Right.
One of the things that we're working on now is how do we set up expectations? If you hire us to do something and we don't tell you, hey, here's step 1, step 2, step 3 or 4. This is what the journey working with us is going to look like. If we don't tell you that, you're going to have your own ideas of what that is. And if your idea is different from our reality, At some point, there's going to be a disagreement, rightfully or wrongfully. And at the end of the day, it's the business owner's fault because we did a poor job informing you of what working with us looks like. And the last thing we want to do is once you're paid in full and your work's about to get done, you're 6 months into the relationship, find out that your expectations are wildly different from our reality. Now we have a problem that we can't fix. But if we do a better job proactively at the beginning. So again, I said we've changed a lot in the past 2 years. Our case managers don't take unsolicited phone calls. There's a dedicated phone line where they can leave a message. There's a dedicated email line. The phone line is answered by an individual, but they don't get directly to the case manager. They post their question. There's a ticketing system. And internally, our goal is to answer that within 24 hours. What we tell the clients is within 48 hours is what we guarantee. We're gonna get back to you. Now, getting back to you might not be I have the answer to your question. It's, hey, we're working out. Here's what's going on, and let me get back to you tomorrow or the next day.
Right, depending on what the request is, obviously.
Exactly. My team still to this day is too reactive. Clients have questions and issues, and they don't have enough time to get the work done. So client success, we're educating them to answer those commonly asked questions. There are certain questions that are asked 30 times a day. I'm exaggerating, but it's the same question over and over again. It doesn't require the $400 an hour employee to answer those questions. The $15 an hour employee can answer those questions because it doesn't require that level of education. It just requires understanding of the process.
Right.
So we created a committee based on a book by Joey Coleman, Never Lose a Client Again. It's all about mastering the client experience, the first 100 days from when they hire you to how to create a raving fan. So we're in our 6th meeting, and the first 5 was working on our internal communication. We realized that I have team members that didn't know what their department was doing. They didn't know because we didn't. So if our team doesn't know what their department does, how on earth is our clients going to know? We had to go, all right, this is what we wanted to do. Let's go way back over here. Let's make sure every department understands what they're doing, that every team member in that department understands what they're doing and what their role is in the overall design of the firm. Then, all right, how are we going to set clients' expectations? And there's a variety of changes that we've made out of that conversation. Our rules of engagement have changed. What clients do we accept? Or better yet, when do we accept a client? Do they have to pay in full to work with us? Or do we accept a payment plan? We have to decide who can we serve because we can't serve everyone. Then at what point does a client go from the sales or marketing to customer service to production? What are the rules of engagement from one department to the other? What does that handoff look like? What are we communicating to the client? What does the team know to communicate to the client and when to do it?
All these systems need to be in place to have a good client experience.
We are now proactively calling our clients every 60 days. Ultimately, it will be every 30 days. And just keeping in touch, not for anything in particular. Hey, here's what's going on in your case. We got this document, or we got that, or don't forget about this. Again, rather than being reactive, waiting for clients to call us and then responding and then leaving a message, and they call back and leave a message, we try to set appointments every 30 or 60 days. Hey, let's talk again on this date, so that we know the date and time. It minimizes the calling back and forth because that's inefficient. So these are things that we've discovered in these conversations that we've had internally. How can we provide a better client experience? When I say mastering the client's experience, in the past, that was always going from a lead to a hire. We became really good at marketing, right? So we track every lead. How many of those set appointments? How many of those show? How many of those hire? Do they hire at the first appointment? Do they hire at a follow-up appointment? What's our conversion rate at each level? What's our marketing at each level? So people that contacted us but didn't set an appointment get certain messages. People that set an appointment, well, we need to remind them of the appointment. Then at the time of the appointment, did they show or did they not show? If they didn't, you get one set of messages. If they did, well, hopefully they hired. If they didn't hire, did they set another follow-up appointment? Did they keep that appointment? What information are we sending them afterwards?
And you're building all these metrics.
Yes. Oh, we already have. That we've had for years now. We're becoming now a little more nuanced. We have all of those numbers per lead source. And we can now trace it down to per agent. How many leads, how many appointments, how many calls did this agent field? How many of them did set an appointment? Of those set appointments, how many of those show? So we can measure the quality of the communication.
You're putting your efforts all in the right places.
That's it. But what we've never done prior to what we're doing now is how can we set client expectations, give them an experience that they rave about. That's the goal. In 100 days, that's what the book suggests, and I think it's a good one. First 100 days, how can you wow them? So much so that they want to tell the world that you're fantastic.
What's this book called again?
Never Lose a Client Again. No, Never Lose a Customer Again. Author is Joey Coleman. Happens to be an attorney, doesn't practice law.
Interesting.
Well, a lot of attorneys ultimately go and do something else.
Why is that?
It's a crappy profession in some ways. It's very stressful. There's a reason why there's a really high drug and alcohol abuse in law. I'll give you a perfect example. 2 weeks ago, got a phone call from a court saying why we weren't in court. What are you talking about? You're scheduled for trial. This is 8:42 in the morning. What do you mean I'm scheduled for trial? Trial's in June. No, the court changed it from June to January with no notice to anyone. If that's not stressful, I don't know what is. No preparation.
How are you supposed to be on top of that?
Well, that's one of the reasons why we're looking to potentially get out of removal work, because you can't. There's specific requirements that what the court is supposed to do. It's written notice to the client and to the attorney. No written notice. No notice at all to anyone, electronic or otherwise. Every attorney is worried about stuff like that. Did I miss a deadline? In some cases, if you don't file something within a certain period of time, the client loses their right to ever do so. It's called a statute of limitations. More common in personal injury world. You only have 2 years or 3 years, depending on your state, to bring a certain claim. If you missed it, you're in trouble. Now, what happens if you're suing a governmental entity? Well, it's not 2 years. Now it's only 90 days. If you don't put them on notice, you violate the Tort Claim Notice Act, and they're immune. So if you didn't realize that truck that hit your client actually works for a municipality rather than a private company, you're in trouble. You committed malpractice. There's a lot of gotcha things in the law that makes the practice, well, very stressful, and can be.
Well, malpractice applies to attorneys too?
Yeah.
What is that called? Attorney malpractice?
Yeah, like medical malpractice.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. I mean, the same concept is you've deviated from the standard of care. I had a duty to a client. I breached that duty, and a reasonable person wouldn't have done what I did, and they were harmed.
Are there law firms that specialize in attorney malpractice?
Yes.
Defense, really?
Either defending it or prosecuting it. If they defend it, they like to say, my best work, no one ever knows about. That's what they say on the defense side. They kept someone that knew committed malpractice from getting not convicted, but prosecuted or settling or solving it in some interesting fashion. Thankfully, never experienced it. Don't ever want to experience it. But, if I make a mistake when I was a traffic attorney or DUI attorney, my client went to jail or lost her license. In the immigration world, if I make a mistake, my client gets deported. And maybe that means they never see their spouse or children again, ever. That's heavy. So we do everything we can to avoid making any mistakes. But we're human. Everybody makes mistakes. Some things are fixable. Some things are not. Thankfully, the mistakes we've made are on the fixable side until they're not.
Right.
Right. So that's where systems and good people come in place. And that's why there's redundancies and checks and balances. If I'm meeting with every new client, I will only accept people that I know we can serve in the system that I've created. Now, what happens if I'm no longer the person who's meeting with every potential client? How do I take my 20 years of experience and put it in someone else's head? I can't. What I can do is create an environment where there's certain things that they look for and make sure that someone else, like myself, is reviewing it afterwards so that nothing gets missed. So that instead of me spending 40 hours meeting with clients, maybe I'm only spending 5 hours a week reviewing the work that someone else did.
And intake is a very vital component that's oftentimes overlooked.
We have a tool that I and a developer created so that Yaakov Citron, that starts with Andres Meyer Law on Monday, by Tuesday could be making phone calls and telling people if we potentially could help them or not, because they just follow the logic of the tool. So on the phone, we invite them. You may qualify. You do qualify for a no-cost consultation because there's something we think that we can help you with. Congratulations. Unlike many other people, you actually have a path to change your life, but it only starts if you do something about it. I'd love to to book you for an appointment with one of our consultants. Does Monday or Tuesday work for you? And then when they show up, the way I explain it to my clients is, remember I said is 953, right? 9 paths to legal status, 5 things that could disqualify, 3 potential fixes. On the phone, all the appointment setter is focused on is, do they have one of the 9? In the consultation, we look at what the 5 and the 3. And we don't accept any client that either has no disqualifiers or has a disqualifier that we can fix. And that happens on the consult stage. And then even after, now I meet with every single client that hires us, but I don't meet with every person that doesn't hire us, if that makes any sense.
Meaning if it gets disqualified before it gets to you, then you won't meet them.
Exactly. But every single person that gets hired, their next appointment is with me. And then I look at everything to make sure, well, was the information that was provided on the initial call accurate? Did we hire for the right thing? Can we actually 953 this client? So that's our 17 points checklist, 953. Can we actually do what we said that we could do? And if we can't, I tell them so. And on occasion, that meant refunding money. I'm sorry, I can't help you. You don't actually qualify. Now, if client lies, that's a different story. And what do I mean by that? Sometimes clients think that the government won't know if I don't tell my attorney. So oh yeah, that was 20 years ago, but they wouldn't know. Yeah, they know because they fingerprint you. So sometimes it's somebody that tried to enter the country, got deported, but used a fake name. Sometimes it's a prior application that they forgot about. Like, they filed an asylum in 1992. They've been here for 30 years. They never went to court. Nothing ever happened. Oh, they now have an order of removal. So we do full background searches to make sure that there are no surprises. But that's a different story. If met client, went through the process, we can help them. We do a full background search, and then we realize that the information differs from what client had told us. That's a very different environment than if we made a mistake. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So it's about having checks and balances to ensure to reduce the likelihood that we made a mistake.
Awesome. Let's pivot. I want to get some tips from you that you would give to this doesn't have to be particular to people in the legal industry, but anyone that's starting a service-based business. What are some tips, some things that you've learned the hard way, or even something you didn't learn the hard way, but tips that you would give to anyone starting out in the industry?
Spend more time building a business than running the business, which I know sounds ironic at the very beginning when it's just you, but you have to get really good at marketing. If you think that marketing is beneath you, go work for someone else because you'll never succeed. You have to learn marketing, or you need a trusted colleague that will do it for you. And it can't really be a vendor because all vendors go bad. Everyone makes mistakes. Not many people take responsibility for their mistakes.
Saying initially you have to understand it yourself before
have to. That's my approach. So if tomorrow I want to go into a new practice of law, look, I'm an attorney. I can do any area of law. I would learn it first. I wouldn't just hire somebody to do it. I wouldn't feel comfortable because that person may make a mistake.
Same thing with marketing.
Exactly. Now, you need to become a student of marketing. Doesn't mean you need to do it all. I'm not suggesting you need to be a copywriter, but you have to at least recognize what good copy is.
Right.
You have to understand when you speak to a vendor and they give you useless nonsense that they feel is important, understand if it doesn't make you money, it's not important. So you have to be able to determine what's useful information and what's not useful information. What are you actually looking for? Well, you're looking for money coming in. If they're giving you information that doesn't translate into money coming in, you have to understand that because you might have very different expectations.
Right. They're not going to be managing your expectations.
Correct. You have to manage theirs.
So you recommend that anyone that's starting any business in the service industry is to understand
any industry. I don't care if it's service or a commodity. If you don't know how to sell, if you don't know how to market, you better find someone that does, or you better find a job.
And how would you suggest that one goes about learning a sufficient amount of marketing in order to be able to start the business?
Well, I suppose one could go back to school, but that's a very expensive way to go about it.
Yeah, it's a big ask.
I read well, I guess I average about a book a week. I don't finish. I mean, sometimes I'm involved in, some of them are personal rather than, I go on binges. Just like with alcohol, totally unrelated. Not that I binge on alcohol, but sometimes I want tequila. Sometimes for a while. Sometimes I want bourbon. Sometimes I want scotch. I can't do one thing all the time. So what I read is sometimes personal, sometimes business. And everybody consumes information differently. Some do it visually reading books, others audio, while running, or YouTube, watching videos. So whatever works for you, there's a lot of information out there, but you're going to have to pay for it. So find a mentor. It could be a coach, or it could be someone's deceased, right? Like Zig Ziglar, Jim Rohn. They're not alive anymore. A lot of their best stuff is either been recorded in videos and class sessions or in books. So I learned starting reading Dan Kennedy. And from him, I was introduced to many other authors. There's a library in every town. There's a Barnes & Nobles. And when there's neither, there's Amazon. So there is really no excuse to learn.
Or you can take an online course as well.
Yeah. Again, but what course do I take? Who's good and who's not? All right, that's difficult. You're going to have to spend money, and sometimes it means wasting money. But at the end of the day, you're going to be better off for it. You don't need to be the best marketer in the world yourself. You just have to be better than your competitors.
Right.
But if you don't know the difference between good marketing and bad marketing, every website vendor is going to tell you your website sucks. I can't tell you how often I get pitched.
I'm not going to tell you it's awesome if they're trying to land a client.
No, but realizing when they send you an email or a phone call that it may sound good, but sometimes it truly is nonsense. And they spent zero time researching you. It's a generic email to get your attention. And they're not going to tell you your website's fantastic, you don't need me. They're going to tell you your website sucks and you can't live without me.
I'm just writing to let you know that I've been looking at your website and damn, it's good. So keep it up. You don't need us.
That's right. Do you want to talk to me anyway?
Always here to hang out. I'm into Heineken. You let me know. So yeah. What's something else that you would advise someone? You're sitting down right now with someone starting out in the service industry. What's some things that they wouldn't figure out on their own that they didn't learn in school?
Okay, so first you have to love what you do, because it's easier to work for somebody else. For some people, I thought when I opened up my own law firm, like, well, they're billing me out back then at $175 an hour. Even if I charge $125 an hour, I could work 15 hours and make the same as what I'm working now or more. How hard is that? That's literally what I thought. I had no idea. I for years and still now, I work a lot more that I own a business than I ever worked before. Now I don't work as much as I used to, but it's only 50 hours a week. I used to work 100 hours a week.
So why is it so important to love what you do?
Because you're not going to put up with it otherwise, and you're going to be miserable, and you're going to make your loved ones miserable. So make sure you like what you're doing so much that you're willing to put up with the crap to do it. So be passionate about what you're doing. If you're just looking this to make some money, there's plenty of ways to make money. Don't waste your time and energy on something you're going to hate. To quote, this is Blaine Onkers. I probably butchered his last name, but he says, don't build the road north if you want to go south. Make sure you're building the life that you want. So make sure you're passionate about what. Don't build the road north if you want to go south. So understand thyself.
I hear that.
Understand thyself. What is it that you want? What is it that you're looking to achieve? Are you just looking for a way to support your family? Again, there's lots of ways to do that.
What's your North Star? Pun intended.
Yep. So number one, be passionate about what you want. Number two, become a really good marketer. Number three, understand that becoming a good marketer, you're then going to get more business, and you better be good at it. If you don't start being good at delivering the service or the product that you're selling, becoming a good marketer, all is it going to do is tell the world how awful you are.
Right.
So you have to start with the premise you're good at what you're doing.
Well, you can't market air.
Exactly. If you're not good at what you're doing, get better. Go work for someone else, learn it, then become, if you have the fire in the belly, then spend some time on the marketing and build your own business. So it starts with getting business. Then it starts with delivering that business and ensuring that it's consistent, that you provide good quality and good outcomes. So that's where management comes in. You can always hire someone to help you with that, or you can hire someone on your team to do that. But sales and marketing, I don't think you can ever truly outsource. I have not seen it done effectively and consistently, because you lose that, well, that's everything.
There are so many things that, like, you go through college and you learn how to do the trade, and then at the end of the day you don't really become good at it until you're actually doing it. But then there are so many things that you don't learn how to do and it hits you hard. What are some of those things?
50% of it, or sometimes 80% of it. You'd be surprised at how few people ever learn how to sell and market. They're in their 60s and they have no idea what that looks like. So once you've mastered that, then you're going to have to get better at managing. In terms of the systemization, what do you want? Do I want keep it small and keep it all? Or do I want to take over the world? Do I want an organization of 100, 300, 400 employees with $1 billion in assets? What do I want? Very important. You have to understand that. What sacrifices are you willing to make for it? Are you going to put in the time? Because at the end of the day, when payroll comes, you have to pay for it.
Right.
Whether the business is earning money or not, either you're letting people go or you're going into debt. So
running a company at a certain stages of it, it's not all glitz and glamour.
It's not.
It's tough.
There's stress at times. There's loss of sleep. You have to know thyself. I keep on getting back to that, and I really didn't initially. I just knew that I didn't want to work for big law, and even medium-sized law, I found a lot of the same nonsense. Now, had I worked with people that I would have trusted and respected, my answer might have been very differently. But that wasn't my experience. I worked with people that I didn't trust and respect, and I couldn't hide that. So you got to know what you're willing to tolerate. And I've thought about it. I've even thought of bringing in partners. I don't see that ever happening, but who knows? I mean, my partner is my wife. But outside of that, it is difficult to find people with a similar vision. And I don't ever want to be in a position where I have to ask your permission to do what I know is right.
Exactly.
If I'm wrong, it's on me. But having to convince you, I don't like that. But that's part of knowing thyself.
Partnerships can be scary. It's a dive into a world where you don't get to be the boss 100%.
I have a buddy of mine. He was involved in 2 lawsuits with 2 different partners. So at the end of the day, I don't know what the story is, who was right and who was wrong, but that takes years out of your life, and it's difficult to focus on building a business when you're defending who did what in a courtroom with an ex-partner.
Right.
So know what you want and work tirelessly to pursue that. And understand that if your goals change, that's okay. As long as you're constantly looking at what your goals are and your family is willing to walk that journey with you.
So how do you find work-life balance? How do you approach it?
There's no such thing. There's work. There's life. Balance, not so much.
How do you figure? How does that go?
Well, for me, it's the Sabbath. That's if not for that, I'd work 7 days a week. And for a while I did. I worked after the Sabbath was over. So being able to disconnect and to tell staff, employees, and everyone I'm not available.
A mandatory disconnect.
For these 25 hours, well, is probably why I haven't had a stroke. Right. But I don't know what balance is. I don't know if there is such a thing as balance. What I do know is it's an evolving thing. So now I'm on day 55 of 10,000 steps or more. I am now trying to sleep 7 hours a day. Sometimes I offer 5 hours, sometimes 6, sometimes 4, but the goal is 7.
It's not bad at all. It's not bad.
7 hours?
Yeah.
It's fantastic. I haven't hit it yet, but I'm working towards it. I'm trying.
No, but hitting 5 and 6, that's pretty good.
No, that's terrible. It's just difficult to function. So last night was 6 hours and 3 minutes. Friday night was 13 hours. I'd really take that day of rest literally.
Oh, I actually had 13 hours too, but I'm jet lag.
Yeah, I get it. Everything is.
My internal clock is completely messed up.
Yeah, no,
I'm flying back tomorrow, so we'll reset that.
So work-life balance, I figure you figure out what's important for you. So for me now, having dinner with my family at 6 o'clock every night, didn't happen before COVID. But with COVID happening, I was able to look at, like a lot of us, what's important to us. I was driving 300 to 500 miles a week to court, to jails, to other offices. Now,
Texas?
Not Texas, but I had a Lakewood office, I had a Bridgewater office, Newark, Freehold. So my thought was I will go to them. Not anymore. Now it's all on Zoom. Yes, I have multiple offices, but they'll walk into the office, they'll get put into a room, conference room, it's a Zoom room. Computer, laptop, maybe an employee of mine is sitting with them, but I am no longer willing to travel an hour each way just to accommodate them.
So for the most part, you come to the Eatontown office and you don't go to the other locations?
For the most part, yes.
Like once a month?
Exceptions can be made, but 3 of the offices I signed February 2020. I haven't seen them since.
So maybe not once a month.
Well, for those, everything was centralized here. Most of our employees are now here. The only time someone has to come to the office is the initial background search because we fingerprint. And fingerprint used to be literally taking ink and, each finger, rolling it.
Now it's electronic.
They put the finger on an electronic pad.
Right.
So, but that's $5,000-$10,000 of equipment. I'm not going to cart that to every location. So now everyone comes here. And everyone's okay with it. They'll come to the office once. I have more New York clients than I ever had before. World has changed. Before, my thought was, client will never pay that much for a case. That was in my head. Client will never travel to hire me. No, that's not true.
What would you say to someone who says those exact words? Client will not pay that much. Client will not come this far.
Test it. Maybe you're right. Measure it. How are you performing now? What's your information? Lead sets, shows, hires. If you know that you're converting, let's just say 50%, that's awesome in the immigration space. If you convert 50% of people, you're doing phenomenal. But let's assume it's 50%. And you haven't changed anything else. Raise your fee modestly. Does it change your percentage? And keep on going until you're comfortable or until the percentage is not one that you're willing to tolerate. Well, now it's 35%. Okay, but you've doubled your salary. You have less clients, but you're making more.
And you're able to service them better as well.
Exactly. So is that the right mix for you? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. You have to make your own assessment. Again, who do you want to be? Who do you want to serve? What's your target audience? But work-life balance is continually a work in progress. Now, post-COVID, again, we made a lot of changes. I eat dinner with my family at 6 o'clock every night. That's important to me. I also train martial arts with my kids twice a week.
Wow. And
since COVID, they're of the right age that we get to train together, which is pretty cool. We earned our black belt November 2021. All 3 of us together, which was awesome.
I could go on forever, but I think I've reached my my time limit with you.
Thank you. I'm hungry.
I know. And we'll do this again, hopefully one day. So thank you very much for whoever's still watching at this point. This has been the Solo to CEO podcast. Andres, can you tell me how can people find you if they're looking for your services?
Well, you can Google us. Even if you butcher my name, you'll still find it. But it's spelled so the website is Andres Mejer Law, AndresMejerLaw.com. We have our YouTube channel where we create weekly content that gets streamed on Mondays and on Fridays. You can find us on all major platforms.
Which we ran out of time, but I was going to talk about that. That'll be on the next session. All right, awesome. Thank you very much, and peace.